Welcome to everyone. We are back. I am Sciortino. I am the director and founder of Junction. And since the coup, we had started with a series of updates, like today, which we called at the time was It's Happening in Myanmar updates. And the idea was to keep Myanmar indeed in the public eye and especially show to the world what was going on in the country. So since the coup, we have conducted 23 of these updates every 2 weeks with different speakers. Then at some point, it seems that the situation was horrible, stabilized and horrible. And for a while, we kind of stopped to reconsider whether we should continue or not with this format or change something, and what was the best way to continue to advocate for attention for Myanmar, especially in a world which has shown very little empathy, I would say, for the fate of the people of Myanmar, especially after the war in Ukraine. It was as if Myanmar simply did not exist. I am in Italy now, and again, I don't see much news about what has been happening, the tragic event that has been happening in the last days. So about 1 month ago, we decided to restart. Even if we are a small contribution, I think it's important to keep documenting what is going on and to hear from people that know more than the general public about what is going on inside Myanmar, as well as the implication for other countries affected, like the many refugees that are today in Thailand. It's important we remain informed. It's important we remain angry, especially after the execution, totally unjustified execution that have found place in the last day. I will not say much because we have with us again Khin Ohmar. Khin Ohmar was one of our resource person for 6 episodes of the updates, and I am very glad that she has been willing to devote her precious time to again inform all of us about what is happening in Myanmar. Please, Khin Ohmar doesn't need much introduction, but again, she is an activist since forever, and also a woman activist, a peace activist, and again, a very informed resource person. Please, Khin Ohmar, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leah. Thanks to Junction for having me back. As when you reach back to me for the second round, of course, I am one of the activists and advocates who really try, to keep the Myanmar Burma agenda on the world stage and not lose the international community's attention, really aiming for the concrete action so that we can really stop this terrorist military from doing what they've been doing, as we just saw this execution of the 4 democracy activists. So I thank you for having me back. But I was not actually expecting to start the session with you all to start with this very horrendous act that they just committed again. I have a very short video of 3.5 minutes produced by the youth activist from Democracy Movement Strike Committee, Dawei, which is Dawei is the city, the capital of Tanindai region in the south. I want to show that to you first because I was just reached out by some other advocates that they will, if I could actually show this with the international community. So it just came in a very right moment before I actually speak to you. So let me start with that first before I actually dive into the update and conversation with you. Thank you.
In Myanmar, since the military coup in February 2021, we have erased a revolution for real democracy, to tear out the roots of fascism, of racism, of chauvinism and exploitation in all their forms, and build a society of human rights and social justice for all. Around the world today, people are alarmed to see their hopes for such a future slipping away. Just that we will. Who will stand up for their rights? Where are the leaders who will fight back? In Myanmar, we are lucky to have such leaders. Two of them, and now another two heroes from Laila Southern Yango were executed by the military dictatorship yesterday, including Sciortino, a hip hop artist who wasn't satisfied to challenge the government with works only, who became an activist and eventually eventually was elected to parliament, and Kojimi, a veteran of free revolution since 1988, who spent a total of 15 years in prison for his political principles. Such people have the conscience to flee after the coup, but instead they work underground to organize the resistance. Hectared day and night by the regime, they were eventually captured. They were real democratic leaders who fought shoulder to shoulder with the oppressed until the end. I want history to remember these heroes. But we also want to make it clear to the military dictatorship that they can't free our revolution by killing our leaders. There are countless thousands of people. There are countless thousands of people who feel the same as they do. On every street, in every village, there are people who are prepared to die, not only submit to fascism. We want the world to understand that this will not be enough. This revolution can win. We are determined that it will win. But for that, we need solidarity and support. We are going up against the modern military and police. We are doing the best we can. But no people can defeat such a state on their own. The best hope for humanity is to fight together. If we fight back one by one, we will be crushed one by one. But united, we will triumph over any threat and reach the bright future. Give us the support to push back the global advance of fascism. If you ever need to fight for your rights, we will be there standing with you, just as our heroes were for us. The revolution of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Democracy must be. Zero! Zero!
Well, you heard the message from the young people. So this is just one of the group. Since that horrendous news came out, there are more and more young people coming back to the street and also giving messages on their social media and YouTube and all to the media as well. How determined they are, how they see that their fight is the right cause for the country. So these four men, two of them are very well known, as you will see in every media, but the other two are little known, but they are treated equally by the people of Myanmar who are fighting against this military tyranny as their heroes, their martyrs. Especially John Min-yu, known as Jimmy, is from the 88 generation, from the 1988 democracy uprising, the time that I was involved. And Pyo Seato, who is the first hip hop singer and artist. And perhaps I think he was the youngest elected members of parliament under Aung San Suu Kyi's administration that he served from 2015 to 20. And one, there's a lot of worry among the people at the same time, is that because there are 74 more people, mostly the youth, including 9 women and 2 children, who've been also sentenced to death. In addition to those 74 in prison, 41 have been sentenced to death in absentia. I'm not so sure where they are, probably hoping that they are in safe place, like in liberated area, as we call, which are the areas under the ethnic army's control in the ethnic regions. So these 4, they were sentenced. They were sentenced to death in June, and then there was a round of condemnation, a round of appeal, and like a pressure and call, including that led for the ASEAN ASEAN Special Envoy, ASEAN Chair, the Prime Minister of Cambodia, Hun Sen, to actually wrote a public appeal letter to Min Aung Hlaing, the leader of the military junta, not to do this. And I'm not so sure how Hun Sen is feeling at this point, or anybody of these world leaders, it's definitely a slap on their face, right? Because it clearly showed that their megaphone diplomacy just simply doesn't work with this psychopath Min Aung Hlaing and the junta that he controls. So we learned about this on the 25th. Until now, their bodies were not given back to the families. So there is a bit of a different information about how they were executed, whether they were shot or they were hanged, whether they were at the same time or they were like one after another, because the family members, particularly the mother of Ziyador, Pyo Ziyador, who gave the media interview as I listened, I didn't hear her saying she didn't really get the information of when he was executed. I mean, she just saw him. She just saw him last Friday, basically, where she actually, Pyo Ziyador himself asked her to bring a little bit of personal, the things that he needs, like the books, the dictionary, for example. So it's just, I can imagine of how these mothers and also the wives, family members must be feeling. What I also found is, just like yesterday, there were mob under the military junta. The civilian wearing mobs showed up in front of the houses of Pyo Ziyador family and also Go Jin Mi's family. They were saying they were upset and angry that Pyo Ziyador's mother said she's proud of her son. She's proud of her son for what he did for the country, and that upset the mobs of the military junta. And I was looking at the video of this angry mobs. I was imagining, what if this older lady came out, or if she happened to be on the street by then, what will they do to her? What will they do to her? I can imagine. So this is quite, there's so much of rage and anger, and also deep sadness among all of us. But like I said, also, there is far more like a determination. And only on the 26th, one day after this news came out, there were at least 12 demonstrations, street protests took place. 2 were outside the country, 1 in Bangkok, 1 in Japan, Tokyo, but the rest are in the country, in different parts of the country. Before I get into some of the updates for you, because I'm so into this moment also, because coming from the ADA generation and all, knowing also how these individuals sacrifice everything of their life for the country. These executions really demonstrate also how the world continued to feel this atrophilia by the world, by the UN, by the ASEAN, by the Security Council. Like I said, even the Prime Minister Hun Sen, who made a public appeal to Min Aung Hlaing, whom he went in, he rushed in and taken the Min Aung Hlaing's promises. Even the ASEAN special envoy was still saying very recently, and only just last week, right? He was saying that there is some progress. And he was telling the world there is some progress. Well, I think, just what is so outrageous even is that not only that these policymakers to address or resolve Myanmar crisis, given mandate by the international community, don't grab on what is really happening in our country. Don't grab on what is the aspiration of the people of Myanmar, that they have given up all they have. And yeah, they went on saying things that is not true, that is not reflected of the ground reality, and that is not going to resolve the country's situation either. So that is where I find a more upsetting, and I feel quite outraged by all of these, the responses. Talking about the responses, I want to share with you something. Again, sorry for sharing more of this whole, frustration. Of course, the murder of these 4 men amount to the crimes against humanity, yeah? But you see, I'm sure you saw mushrooms of these statements from elsewhere, yeah, from the Asia governments to the Western governments, even the Security Council. The Security Council actually just released a statement yesterday. Then I read all of these statements, including from the US government, for example. They're getting so wrong. They're getting so wrong. For example, the Security Council refer these activists as opposition activists. Opposition activists? What kind of narrative are they trying to build about this country? The people are going through the hell under this terrorist organization. So they call these 4 people as opposition activists who were just executed. And then you will hear a US government saying, there can be no more business as usual. What kind of language is that? What we need is a time-bounded benchmark set actions that needs right away. Doesn't have to be from the United Nations Security Council right away, because we know China and Russia is going to block. But what we need is the other countries to show their full political will, as much as they have shown to the people of Ukraine, the people of Ukraine who actually faced the aggression from Russia. And you will hear the Japanese government come up with a statement. I look at all of these. I'm sorry, this hypocrisy really needs to stop, because you see the Japanese foreign minister is also saying basically it's condemning these executions, yeah. But what they need to do, let's start with just one small thing. They have invited the junta mainline to attend the funeral of the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, which is in next 2 months, I think. Start denouncing, withdrawing, let the junta know that you are not a part of this, even the small thing. But you see, all of these little things add up that allow the military to continue to act such, continue to commit these atrocity crimes. I want to show you another how these little things or more coming together add up that further embolden this military. The UN agencies in Myanmar, in spite of the people in Myanmar giving up their lives, they keep announcing the job openings, saying that to support such and such ministry under whom? By the junta, under the junta. So to do what? And then you will see also, for example, when Cambodia, in May, when Cambodia actually organized this humanitarian consultative meeting, they only invited the junta because junta didn't agree. They disinvited the UN Special Envoy, Ms. Dr. Noeleen Heyzer. But you will still see the UN OCHA and others still joining, attending, and in fact, continue to be contributing for this humanitarian assessment mission, in fact, that the people are not a part of. The legitimate political actors of our country, such as the National Unity Government or the ethnic revolutionary organizations, are not a part of, or the local ground humanitarian actors like the civil society and the community-based organizations are not a part of in any way. So what are these actors are trying to do? So I think this is all of these things, and also another thing is also the embassies in the country. They need to downgrade their diplomatic ties and put more pressure on this junta. And in this, I congratulate the UK ambassador who actually made a statement about him having to leave the country. We need people with a conscious mind like them, like him. We don't need the UN agencies people celebrate, like having a fun, in the evening over beer and wine in Myanmar when the country peoples are being killed. We don't need these people. And don't even tell us that they are there for our country and our people, because some of them want to claim to be. That's not how we see it. I'm sorry, And UN Secretary General over this killing, this execution. And he was saying, let me think what he was saying. Well, I mean, he was also saying something very, similar. I forgot what is the exact word. But all of them continue to hide behind the ASEAN, continue to defer Myanmar crisis to the ASEAN. I'm sorry. Over a year and how many months since April? A year and 4 months? 3 months? The ASEAN actually failed. So what else are they talking about here? I think they all need to go beyond, like move beyond ASEAN. And also, I think it's so important that ASEAN itself must have enough courage to tell the world, to tell the Security Council, to tell the UN, they alone cannot do this anymore. Let's just be honest, because everything that when they are dishonest is killing our people on the ground. So I think ASEAN, in their next week ministerial meeting, they must be coming to the point of making a decision and tell the whole world that they cannot do it. I think that honesty is essential. It must be first. But of course, we appreciate very much of the Malaysian foreign minister who has been speaking out, who has been grabbing the reality of the Myanmar crisis on the ground very well and reflecting in his public messages and statement. And we appreciate him also saying that, like he will actually bring this agenda of not to or disinvite or not to invite any more of these military hunters representatives. All of these military hunters people, attending the ASEAN Women and Children Commission, ASEAN Intergovernmental Human Rights Commission. What is going on in this world? I think these realities, these four people behind me on my backdrop, they didn't give up their lives for nothing. And more than 2,000 activists, democracy and human rights activists, including the young children who've been killed in cold blood by this hunter over the course of the last 17 months. They didn't die for nothing. I think we must stop this beast. That is what we need to do. And you know what also? There are many of their family members. When some countries like US and UK and EU impose such and such sanctions, but these military hunters' families and their cronies continue to be traveling, with the free passage to all of these countries, having vacations, having blah, 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 So I'm sorry, these are very tangible actions that are doable, that are feasible, that are enforceable. We need to see that, like right away. And also the military hunters' embassies. They have military attachés. I learned some months back that German actually kick up the military attaché. I hope that is true. I read it though, but I didn't follow up on that. But regardless, these countries, they need to kick out all of these military attachés from their countries. And I think what also is needed is this is the time. We need to see the UK, who actually initiated and led lodging the case at the ICC for Ukraine against Russia. We need the UK, the US, do that same thing for Myanmar. I think these are the key actions that we need, because as these executions took place, the killings across the country didn't stop. There were children are being bombed, the children are being shot and killed, tortured. And we're facing immense humanitarian crisis, as you can see, because the military not only block, but also destroy the humanitarian need and assistance while they continue to attack on the humanitarian workers or the health workers. And that's the very reason I'm telling you, these UN agencies, in the name of quote unquote, whatever the program, they must stop, because they are recruiting the locals when they don't even have any protection plan for these locals, unless they hire the military hunters people. In many cases, they have in the past too. So in that case, what kind of program all of these money are being spent for in our country in the name of the Myanmar people? So that's why I'm saying like this needs to be stopped. So with that, I'm going to just stop here, because I know like if I continue on, I know there are a lot more that I can continue. But I think it's important that I get into discussion with you with questions that you might have for me. Thank you, Leah. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Omar. As usual, very moving what you have been saying. And indeed, I think for all of us is very emotional. Although we knew that the junta can do this and worse, it has done in the past. It's not new, but I think all of us were very shocked when we heard about this execution, as we thought they would just delay, and then suddenly they have done, showing indeed their disregard of any ethical principle. So we have a first question, and please, for others, feel free to, the one in the Zoom can also show their face and ask, but for the other, we take a question also from Facebook. So we have two questions. Anonymous. This is about the international community and human rights and advocacy group who say they support the resistance. But as soon as then the question come about providing arms to the ethnic groups as well as the people force, democracy force, then they prefer to divert the question and start to talk more about humanitarian aid. So the question is, how do they think this group, that the resistance is going to win without better arms? Why they don't say, and why do this advocacy group argue for getting better arms? This is a first question. Maybe you can answer this. There are a few more coming in, so I will group them together. But I think this is indeed a big question because many of the international group are hesitant, or they have rules that do not, donor organization that do not allow for providing funding for armed resistance. So what you say about this?
Well, I mean, I cannot speak for the other advocacy groups or other human rights advocacy groups, whether local or regional or international, but I can just speak about about myself. Yeah. So basically, throughout my life, I support the ethnic revolutionary organizations, and these are armies. These are armed organizations for the right cause. Also understanding that they have never been given any other chance to be able to live in peace. Yeah. So peace and war, peace and conflict, peace and war. It's always the two sides of the same coin, isn't it? So I come from the 1988 generation, and like Kojimi, who was executed, I actually got into the border areas because I thought that is the time to join the armed resistance because of the violence that we faced that time, which is compared to the current time. I definitely see the current time is way much by magnitude and degree, way much far more severe violence than our time. So for me, there is always the right to self-defense. So the right to self-defense can be for individual, which is in fact protected by law in the United States, isn't it? So the right to self-defense, either for individual or for community, for larger, when the time comes with this kind of inhumane violence committed by such entity like this military, Myanmar military, that is a need. And I think, I mean, for all of us, knowing of where the human history come, throughout the human history, there were armed revolutions. There have been armed revolutions. So there's nothing to be nothing to shy away from this reality that is given for the peoples to defend their life and liberty. Yeah. So for me, I have supported them, and therefore, like Anton, up to now, when the National Unity Government declared the defense war, many international people said, oh gosh, your movement become violent. I said, excuse me, excuse me. This is a government elected by the people. Every government has the army, mostly. And when the people elected government being under attack by so-called army, of course they have to form the army. And they started saying defense war. And then all of these different ethnic armies, the same thing. I mean, you don't see the Korean National Union, sending a group of sniper to Naypyidaw. What they're doing is defending their ancestral land and the community, their rights, the rights of their people, the self-determination. So to me, any person who believes in human rights truly should be able to take a stand for the self-defense too. But am I actually advocating for the world to give the arms to the NUG or to the PDF or to the EROs? In the past, I have never done that because there is no need for me to actually say it. But I never said no either, right? Because people need it. I actually departed from that path because for my own determination, for how the path that I want to continue to pursue my belief and my determination to bring about democracy and human rights has come to be a different path that I chose, which is the education. That's how I actually departed. But then can you actually dissociate between the revolution and education? Of course not. So I know I'm not really giving you probably the concrete answer here, but what I'm trying to say here is that people like myself, we have advocated for the communities under attack, marginalized, persecuted, when they had to actually defend for themselves. So that's where we are. And that is the very reason I've been telling the world is like, if you support 1% of what you've been supporting to Ukraine, if you look at what support that Ukraine is getting, of course that includes the arms too, because that is needed. The president of Ukraine called for it. So when the president of Ukraine called for it, the world is ready to give. But when the Myanmar political leaders call for it, whether they are ethnic or the national unity government, how the world is responding. Everybody, if you even with this execution, if you look at all of the statements, everybody, starting from Security Council all the way to US government, they're all telling Myanmar people to go back to square one, which is a negotiated settlement with this murderous terrorist monsters to negotiate and have this quote unquote power sharing. See, that's why I'm telling you of this world of hypocrisy. I mean, so with that, here I am. I don't shy away from what is needed. The Myanmar people who are defending their life and liberty needs all means of support. That includes arms. But am I actually going around and advocate for it? That's not what I'm doing. But I will not shy away from the fact that the need on the ground includes perhaps probably even more than before of that.
Okay, we have some other question, including, so the next is about the visit of the junta leader to Russia. That is one question. Is there been any international response to that visit? And then also a comment that the person appreciates the message of the activists that the development in Myanmar are part of a global advance of fascism. So that is something from the message that she appreciates from the person asking. But the question is more about the visit, the recent visit of the junta leader, the junta general to Russia, and what the world is saying about this. Then another question, the new UNOPS will soon present its paper to, again, the junta is not the first one who is doing this from the UN and other diplomatic body. How can we stop them and others from doing this? Then here we have another one from Cecilia from Italy, Birmania. My compatriota is the NUG and NUCC willing to launch a strategy toward like-minded countries so that they will launch an emergency coalition to substitute ASEAN and to impose generalized sanction against the junta. So if we agree ASEAN is not the body that should deal with the junta, are there NUG or NUCC willing to have a strategy that put together a number of countries to really deal with that part? I stop here. There are some more questions, but for now, I think these are already quite significant.
Thank you, Leah. I'm not so sure about the. I'm not so sure I got correctly for the UNOPS issue, but the NUG, NUCC, whether or not they are, willing to already to say something on the ASEAN launch, I think that's something I won't be able to answer because I'm not NUG or NUCC, and I don't know where these political bodies currently thinking at the moment. Which of course, we should call for to understand, because we need to know of where these political actors are also. And I know they had they actually had a emergency meeting, the president and the prime minister, including after this execution happened. And they came up with a public statement, the president's speech, and basically saying that they they will be basically, just like my reading is that they will be increasing their revolution movement. But on this particular issue with the ASEAN, I'm not so sure. I didn't read it yet, and so I won't be able to answer that. I'm sorry about that. But UNOPS question, can you have me clarify again?
Well, UNOPS, I think, is the new commissioner, or I am not sure, is could be commissioner. So anyway, new personnel of UNOPS is going to, as usual, introduce himself or herself to the junta. So as many ambassadors do, and many UN personnel also do before starting. So forget UNOPS, but in general, what can be done about them indeed not doing this, or how to stop this to happen if possible?
So that's one of the problems that I raised in my sharing. I think it was last month, the UNICEF new person submitted his credential, shaking hands with me online, giving a very big smile. That really hurts the people of Myanmar, because it's also about the time when the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights, Mr. Tom Andrews, launched his research paper and finding on the situation of the children and the being attacked by this military junta. What an irony! What an irony! What a shame! I mean, seriously, what a shame! So that's why I'm saying that these UN agencies, they need to actually, the problem is the UN. That's why, I don't know if you remember, I think in my the first round, I even mentioned how the Secretary General being so either silent or ineffective and not giving them a crisis a priority is a major problem. But there's so many major problems with this whole UN, right? Because UN has failed Myanmar for a long time. But in fact, let me just go ahead and accuse. Under the previous Than Shwe regime, Than Shwe military regime, these UN agencies kept so quiet, when just did business as usual work with this military junta. So what did they get? In the name of the Myanmar people's development, they finally got the military junta further entrenched of their control over the country. That's what they got. I mean, that's what they didn't get. That's what we got, our people got. Yeah. So I think there is another problem is that these people never learn lesson. They don't learn lesson at the expense of our people's lives. So this UN, the UNICEF, I mean, like, isn't that his and that agency's role to see where the children are now under this military attack? So can they not think out of the box? Can they not think more creatively? After all, that's what they've been paid for. So what we need is for them not to engage with this military, not to give their credentials, not to give out the information. We are very worried about the UNOPS. If the UNOPS, the information that they get, I mean, I'm sorry, UNOPS doesn't have a good credential in other countries either. I'm sorry. But what if the UNOPS information in their hand about the civil society, the local groups, get into the military's hand? Can you ever imagine? We talk about the accountability of the private sector. When what's the telecom, Telenor, when Telenor sold their business in Myanmar, and then there was a risk of the military getting millions of data, we all call out. But then what about these UN agencies and those who are actually working? Who's going to hold them accountable? That's a big question. The UN, after the Rohingya genocide, there was this internal, assessment done by Mr. Rosenthal. He came out with a report saying that there is systemic failure of the UN. But I don't see, at least we don't see, any of these UN agencies operate in Myanmar give any care about these recommendations. Well, if they care and they do something, they have to let us know. See, that's another problem. Myanmar people are kept in the dark when it comes of any actions and programs by these agencies, by these UN or the others, international people who mingle in Myanmar's affairs, who take control of their resources. And they never share of any of this information publicly. So, I mean, now about the UNOPS, this is the second time that I heard, in fact. But other than that, do we actually know what is really happening? And the same thing with the OCHA, after this Cambodia meeting, is OCHA working with, supporting the AJAR centers, the ASEAN Humanitarian Coordination Centers assessment program? Are we being informed as the people? So why are these actors doing things so discreetly? What is the reason, really? So I think that is a huge problem that I keep saying that. And I know, I know that, these agencies, when they hear me saying that, I'm sure they will perhaps even hate me. But I'm sorry, I have to say it for the sake of our people, After all, what they're doing is in the name of our people, in the name of our country. And their actions we cannot allow their actions prolong this military to continue to kill our people. I think that is why we have to tell Guterres, the Secretary General, he needs to step up. We've been telling him he needs to step up. There is no coordinator, country resident coordinator in Myanmar for so long. With all of this 18 months of crisis, I mean, this lacking the resident coordinator has been before the crisis, before this military attempted this coup. But now with the current situation, why the UN is not able to even step up to do what it needs to do? Why only just looking into engaging with this junta, extend the MOU, do this and that program? I'm sorry, the UNDP is doing this human rights training program for the, imagine of for whom? For the businesses, for the companies. Well, I'm sorry, how many of these companies are under the military or owned by the military, or they are cronies? So what kind of human rights trainings that they want to give to these trainings when the whole country is being killed? So I think there's a huge problem. And that's the very reason I use the word that everything was happening, including the democracy activist execution, is largely to blame on these actors. I'm sorry, I have to say it, because after all, they are doing what in the name of our country. So I have to say it.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. We will not be able to treat all of them. I will take some that are somewhat different and from different people. One is, thank you for the updates, Khin, and if you have time, could you please discuss more the relationship between education and revolution? I think this refers to what you have been saying at the end, and I think it's a very important point. Another one related to the UN, again. So if they are to stop cooperating with the junta, which is good, but then are they still able, how should they support the people of Myanmar? So how could they still support, but without cooperating with the junta? And finally, about the NUG and NUCC, again, there are many questions here. I cannot go through, but just one is about what has the NUG done after the execution of these 4 heroes. I mean, have they done something very concrete, or is again more statements that have come from the NUG? And another related, also a little bit critical of them, that there is more and more disappointment about the NUG, especially about the role, and also because of they are dominated by the NLD and still not fully trusted when it comes to inclusiveness of ethnic groups, although it's proclaimed that they are inclusive of the Rohingya, that may not always transpire. So many groups are kind of losing their support that they were giving to the NUG. So I think this is really a lot to talk again, but try to be short. This will be the last question for today.
Leah, you give me the very important questions and very serious issues. I'm not so sure I'll be able to do it in very short, but I'll try. Yeah. When it comes, let me start with the NUG. I know in times as such, the frustration can grow even further, right? But I think also it's important that we don't lose the track of everybody has a role in this revolution, and in particular like NUG and UCC, because of their mandate from the people, whether from the election or from the ethnic communities, who joined the NUG or the NUCC. They all have the mandate from their various different constituencies in different ways, and that's important that we have to keep recognizing that. But saying that, we still need to hold them accountable. And I've been saying that since day one of the NUG formation. I call for the recognition for the NUG, but at the same time, I call for the transparency and accountability too. And I think it's important we all do that. So everything that, your frustration, it's fine for you to just go ahead and address to them and let them respond to you. And if they don't respond, there are many ways that we can actually, have them respond. With regards to what they will do, I I mean, the statement alone is not going to be, I don't think that statement alone is going to be what they will be doing. I'm sure they will be doing more as they had the emergency, but of course I have no way of knowing of what they will do. So again, let's wait and see, but we should not be just wait and see, right? We should also raise the concerns and also even the suggestions, let them know. You can make a public suggestion, you can write to them. So that's one thing with the NUG and UCC. With regards to the issues such as like who is included and whether the NLD majority there. I think one thing that also, we have to be clear is that the NLD participation more in those bodies, it probably also is something that people feel very uncomfortable. But for me, maybe because I'm not there, but I think for me, I look at it in a very, very straightforward way, is that this is the largest political party who won the election in 2020. And they have a larger stake in the politics. But this is a revolution. So they need to also understand that they are not the, they are not in their normal comfort zone anymore. They need to be actually open to the others, to be a part in the equal partnership and equal stakeholder of this revolution. That's what the NLD side needs to do. That I think we need to see more from the NLD to open that, rather than like, oh, we are the elected, like a body that we won the election and therefore other people need to listen to. That's not what we need in this revolution. This is an inclusive. But then the other stakeholders or the other participating bodies, entities, they also need to actually also, step up, right? Because they have to actually, they have an equal stake in this. They just need to step up and be firm with the principles. So what do I mean by be firm with the principles? When they are frustrated, or like if they don't want to see more of these the NLD being the majority, taking more charge of the agenda, what they need to do is also, they also have to open up themselves to the others, you see? Like, for example, having the Muslim minorities participate in those forums. Invite the Rohingya community to be a part of it. That is what is lacking. You see, the Spring Revolution actually shown this solidarity from one another, never in the past, but that needs to be transformed into the action by all of these actors. Invite the Rohingyas, invite the Muslim community, and that's what they need to do. So I think I'll just end there, because yes, of course, I feel that the frustration, but I think that the things we need to also be with a good faith, but also with a good political will, to actually raise these points directly to these stakeholders are very important at this point. I know that very two big questions. I want to keep the revolution and education to the last, but there is something before that. There were two first questions that you gave me. Leah, can you help me the other one, please?
That is a good question also. Oh yeah, you said about the international organization. You are saying they
yes.
should engage with the
Yes.
junta, but then the question is, but how can they still help? We don't want to lose the help they could give.
Right. Thank you. That's a very important question. Thank you for whoever asked that question. Thank you so much. I didn't want to miss this chance, but I might have lost it if you didn't ask me this question. So thank you. So basically, for the 17-18 months, the people have been doing they have been the actors on the ground, that they've been doing a lot for themselves, for their communities, when it comes to, for example, like, COVID vaccine or the humanitarian, and, some of them are able to find solidarity support from some of the international actors, like, international NGOs or the donors, so the very, just to give you one example, is the very much needed, the humanitarian aid and the COVID vaccine, that's been reached to the people by the different means, including, in particular, through the cross-border channels. When we say through the cross-border, it doesn't mean like, you know, the humanitarian aid convoys, the trucks crossing the border to the other side of the border. Not like that. There are so many ways that can happen because this country has experienced the military man-made crisis for a long time. Yeah, so especially the ethnic communities, particularly on the eastern border with Thailand, they're very, you know, experienced. They have the expertise, they have the trust from the local communities, they have the know-how, they know how to do things. So what we're needing is the political will from these international actors, including the donors, the governments, the neighboring governments, the INGOs. I think they need to put the trust in the people of Myanmar, these local actors who have the capacity, agency, resilience, and know-how, knowledge, and the trust. What more do you want? Of course, they won't be able to give 3 quotations as these INGOs and UN agencies will normally require in normal time. But this is non-normal, yeah? So what they need, what I'm telling you is not that they don't know. Many of them know already. And I hope that they are actually starting to take actions, you know, because regardless of whether they work in partnership with and supporting the local actors, local community groups, the people themselves, the communities themselves are doing it. Yeah. So what we need is don't work with the junta, but work with the local groups where there are many channels. I cannot say it here. I'm sorry, because that's not my place to say it. But there are many ways the local groups have been doing it. And that is something these actors, that's why I'm saying they need to think out of the box. They need to act out of the box. Otherwise, what they do is just keep, you know, feeding that, you know, feeding to the beast to just get bigger and kill the people. So they have to stop that. But there are alternatives. There are alternatives, and that alternatives lies with the people and the organizations and community and networks that they trust. And I think that's what we need. And also the other way is the NUG. There are like a NUG Ministry of Women, Health and the Youth, for example, Women, Youth and Children, for example, or the Health Ministry, or the I forgot what the other ministries. But there are many ways of, because, you know, one thing that we cannot forget is that this military, after 18 months, they're losing more and more of the ground. Yeah, even compared to the beginning months of their attempt to take the coup. Right now, they're losing far more on the ground in terms of their local administration. Many areas they have no control. Yeah, many areas they have no control. There are local administrations, local committees for this and that. Of course, these groups have been doing that. They can do more if the international actors put the trust and confidence in them and work in tandem. Okay. The last, the revolution and education. It comes from my personal experience. Like I share with you. I first came out to join the armed resistance, but by the time when I got into the jungle, seeing the ethnic revolutionary organizations and the ethnic communities, the children, the youth, what I started to see is that the education for the very long run, when the revolution right now needs to do what needs to be done. But for the long run, for a society, to build a society and to sustain that social fabrics, we need the education. So when I decided to depart from the armed resistance movement, my focus was with the education. I need to fill in for myself also. But what I feel in of that education is not for me, really is for what I can do for the communities. So that was my life set out. And I know that also, you know, in the time in the past, the ethnic organizations like the KNU, or even the All Burma Student Democratic Front, the ABSDF, the Student Army from the 1988 time when it was formed. I was actually in the beginning, I was a part of it in a very short time. I mean, compared to many others, I was one of the earlier one who left the Student Army. But even in the Student Army, you know, there were no internet, no cell phones, nothing like this time, yeah. But even in that time, the Student Army gave education a priority. They have established many ways, and you know, like, so what I'm trying to say is throughout the history of this resistance to this military from the border, including my organization that I chair for 6-7 years or so, we set up the training centers in the refugee camps to give the trainings to the young people about the constitution, democracy, democratic leadership, community organizing, human rights, good governance, public administration. You see, my point here is now there's so many of these young people, well-educated or still in their education, taking education, are now engaged in the armed struggle. When they win the revolution, they didn't take up the arms because they want to become soldiers. If they wanted, they could have done it before already too. And this is a militarized country. But also, you know, them joining the military, it's the easiest job in the country, really. So those who are taking up arms at one point when the revolution wins, if they, of course, you know, wish it for the best to be the soonest time. So by the time they will be coming back to the civilian side, where they will continue to contribute for the best that they could for the country's building. I think we need them to have the education opportunity, even during the revolution time, even for 2 hours on Zoom about ASEAN, even 2-hour session on Zoom about the, you know, like, let's say political science or something, about Dalai Lama, about, I don't know, you know, about Rwanda or South Africa, you know, how they carry out the transition, for example, or the people's movement, for example, you see? So these political knowledge needs to be built for these young people who are engaged in the revolution, because it is a part of building, it is a part of laying the foundation for the long-term future of the country, for the society, but also giving these young people even more full of their, you know, to help them to capitalize more fuller of their capacity, even when they are holding arms. That's what we need. And when I say that's revolution and education together, that's what I really meant. And this is something I have been advocating already within the revolution for the past few months. So, yeah.
Thank you, Ohmar. I think this is the perfect way to end what I start with a very tragic illustration of the cruelty of the junta regime, and now we have an illustration of the strong spirit of resilience, which will not, I think, cannot lose. It will win in the end. I think what your last word of the long term of our education and revolution will be combined for the better of Myanmar and the principle that have been enshrined in the new Myanmar, inclusive and gender equity and many other principles that you have put in the new constitution, in the real constitution. So with this, I think, with this optimistic message, we conclude our updates. There are again many more questions. We will have to keep it for the next, which will be in 1 month time, unless something happens Hopefully nothing tragic, but some good event, and then we may change the schedule. But otherwise, in 1 month, we will see again Ohmar with us, and further pay attention. Please do share this video because indeed we are fighting with the silence of the global community. So the more people talk about, the better will be. It's a small way of contributing to the fight for a better Myanmar. So please do share with your friends in all possible way, and see you again in 1 month. I must say also thank to AJAR. AJAR is a regional human rights organization, very much active in transitional justice in various parts of the region, including Indonesia and Timor-Leste and Thailand and also Myanmar. So we are very proud to be partnering with them with many of these updates. And I want to mention briefly also another program with Junction, which is about living under the coup, documenting the impacts, not only the big impacts, the tragic impacts, death, torture, etc., but also what it means for the life, the ordinary lives of people who remain in Myanmar or who had to go outside of Myanmar. So please do write your story and send it to us. You can write in Burmese as well as in English or other language. And we are trying to document as much as possible because that will be important. Now, as well as a way of communicating what is happening, but even later when hopefully Myanmar will be brought to the International Court of Justice. I mean, the impact is for everyone, not only the most tragic one. I think it's important to remember. Okay, with this, again, thank you, Ohmar, for being with us, spending time, and see you all in 1 month's time.
Thank you. Thanks both to AJAR and Junction, and thanks to all of you for joining today.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Keep strong.